Hello again. I am going to keep showing you what are some of the things that you can do in fotoflexer. In the last brief tutorial, I showed you how to log in and how to upload your first picture, and I went over the tabs and some of their functions, and I mentioned that we would only be using very few of the tabs. So the tab that we will use the most is the Layers tab, which is where I'm going right now. And that's what we will explore in this mini tutorial. So just as a reminder, when we first uploaded the photo, it opened up in the Basic tab. Now we're clicking on the Layers tab. And as I mentioned, and as you know, we will need more than one picture to create a photo montage, probably 2, 3, 4, 5 pictures, depending on what you're going for. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add some images. And I can do that here on Layers, Add Images. As I did before, I upload a photo from my computer. So I click on Upload, and I'm going to find other pictures to upload. Here I have one. So you see I have two photos now. You can't see the deer anymore because it's right behind the hand. You see if I click on the photographs, you get a dotted line that appears next to them. And while I have that line, I can actually move them. I just drag them with my mouse, with my cursor, and I can move them. They're overlapping right now, but I will show you how to resize them in a second. But before I do that, I also want you to notice that now that I have two pictures, the one picture is not filling the entire space, but I have space around it. I'm talking about this gray area over here, which is actually the workspace. That's the area that I can use to create my photo montage. And if you go to the top right over here, you see that I have pictures of some hills, some little hills, and some big hills or mountains. And if I go towards the small mountain slowly, I'm zooming out, which eventually allows me to see, oops, I zoomed out too much, allows me to see my entire work area, which is this gray area, as well as its shape. Notice that if I try to move my pictures outside of this work area, I really can't, but I do have a lot more space around them now. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I can do with these pictures now that I have them in here. One of them, as you've seen, is I can move them around by clicking on them, making sure that I have the dotted line around them, and then dragging them around my workspace. Another thing that I can do with them is resize them just by grabbing one of the little squares around it and dragging it. And notice that as I resize it, I can really change the proportions, where I make a really kind of skinny deer or a very wide deer or a short deer. So you want to be mindful of that when you're resizing, that the proportions are also changing. Here, see, I can really distort the hand in different ways, or keep it more or less the way it should look in real life, but making it much bigger or much smaller. Another thing that I can do is I can rotate my images. You see when you click on them, there's this little circular arrow that appears. If I just hold on to that and drag, I can rotate them. The rotation stopped because my image, the corner of my image came onto the edge. So if I want to keep rotating, I just need to move it so that I have space to keep rotating it. So I could rotate it any way I want. So I'll leave it like that for now. No, I think I want this one straight for now. Okay, so see, I got it at an angle, and I want it totally straight. So here on the top left, you have an undo function. So anything you do, say I resize this, I can undo that. And I can undo several actions back. Or I can redo. which is another function. Okay, so we've spoken about resizing images, moving images around, rotating images. Another thing that you can do here with the Layers tab, which is also super useful, is changing the order in which images appear. And, you know, actually just a moment on the name of this tab, which is Layers. And if you think of layers as pieces of paper that are sitting on top of each other, so that's what these layers would be. The pictures are on top of each other, just like sheets of paper might be, or actual printed pictures might be. So we're playing with those layers, doing things with those various layers, which means that if I wanted for the hand to be behind the deer, I could do that. And this function up here, push back, allows me to do that. Or I can pull it forward again. So I can push it back, or I can then take the deer and push it back. And this becomes interesting when you have more than 2 images. So let me pull a couple of images from my folder onto my workspace. Upload photo, and I will go to my river picture. So now you see I have 3 pictures overlapping, and say I want the river all the way back. So I click on it and I push back and I push back again. And there it is. Or say I want the river back in between the deer and the hand. I pull it forward. And now I decide, no, I really want the hand behind the river. So I click on it and I push it back. So that's how you play with the order in which the images appear, which is another really helpful function. And then the last helpful function that I will show you here is the transparency and opacity function. And I think what I will do is I will first pull my deer forward and all the way forward. And through this function up here called opacity, I can make any one of my pictures transparent, really transparent, or just somewhat transparent. So again, I first click on it. I always want to make sure that I have the dotted line around it before I want to change a picture in any way, whether it's moving, rotating, resizing. And then I click on opacity. And you see it's at 100% of opacity, meaning it's totally opaque. I cannot see through it at all. But as I start moving towards the 0, it starts becoming transparent until it disappears. So you can play with a level of transparency that you want there. So I want it somewhat transparent, I think, and I want to make sure that I click done before so that it applies the effect. So now I'm just starting to play around as I see how the images might come together, and I see that river back there, and I think I want to make it big behind the transparent deer. Now I want to click on the deer. Maybe I can make it a little bit more transparent. Let's see what happens if I make it more transparent. And maybe I want to bring my hand closer to the deer, pull it forward so it's there as though it's holding the deer, maybe making it bigger. I'll rotate it a bit, make it bigger. I want to pull it forward. So you see, you can start playing with the opacity and the placement of these images in relation to each other, which one is in the front, which is in the back, how big, how small you want them, to start thinking through what a photo montage might look like. So very often working with photo montages, you don't set out with a very specific idea. The visual idea kind of emerges as you start playing around with images. But as you see here, there's some very annoying things that are keeping me from really integrating my photo montage. Like I have all that white around the hand, and I kind of wish I could get rid of the background of the deer, around the deer, so it could look like it's on the water. So we will deal with that in the next tutorial. I'll show you how to do that.